Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a true story. It's about my two fathers. One was my real dad, obviously, and the other dad was my best friend's father. One dad, my real dad, was a PhD in education, ultimately became the superintendent of education for the state of Hawaii where I grew up. My best friend's father was my rich dad. He was a man who started with virtually nothing, and by the time he passed on, he was one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. So when you look at the hula girls and the palm trees and the white sand beaches and the hotels, well, he owned the land underneath those big hotels and things like this. So he passed on a massive fortune to his children. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a true story about what two fathers, one highly educated and one very rich, tell their sons, my best friend and I, about the subject of money. And in my book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is technically accurate about financial intelligence and financial literacy, in other words, I made the subject of finance and business so simple a kid could understand it, and it's written that way, because I was only 9 years old when my rich dad began to teach me. And of the 6 lessons my rich dad taught me, probably the most important one was to mind your own business. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today, is the importance of owning your own business, or why you should mind your own business. Because it was my poor dad, the school teacher, the PhD, he's always the one who said, you should go to school, get good grades, which I did, so you can get a safe, secure job. In other words, the whole programming, conditioning, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it, is to program us to become employees, to work and minding somebody else's business. So starting from the age of 9, my rich dad said, you get 2 different points of view out there. Here's my PhD dad who says I should become an employee. And here's my rich dad who said, don't be an employee, become an employer. In other words, mind your own business. I think that's what we're here to talk to today, is the difference between the employee mentality versus a business owner mentality. The way the wealthiest people get rich is via business. Like Thomas Edison founded a company called General Electric. Henry Ford founded a company called Ford Motor Company, if you realize. The richest man in the world today, his name is Bill Gates, and he built it off of nothing. He built it in the information age, and that's really what we're here to talk about, because never before has it been easier for an individual to become wealthy. You see, in the old days, in the industrial age, it took massive amounts of money, massive amounts of land, and massive amounts of people. But in the information age, never has it been easier, especially with the internet coming up. The problem is our school system is still programming us for what I call industrial age ideas versus information age ideas. I think really that's the difference. And with I don't know if you believe in job security, but I never did. I only had a job for 4 years in my entire life, because my rich dad always taught me to build companies, build my businesses, and hire people, because it's a lot more secure that way. But these 401ks, I really questioned them. Some of them will be successful, a lot of them will not be successful. So if you're going to take financial security or financial freedom into your own consciousness, I don't think you can leave it up to somebody else. And to do that, you need to start minding your own business. The good news is it's never been easier to do that. The reason for that is, as I said in my second book, was called the Cash Flow Quadrant. The Cash Flow Quadrant was about the 4 different people found in the world of business. The E, there's ES, the B, and the I. E stands for employee. S stands for self-employed or small business owner. B stands for business owner, and I stands for investor. The E and the S, although you can become very wealthy that way, that's probably the hardest way to get wealthy, simply because it requires you to work hard. A business owner is different. A business owner requires a system. And I think that's one of the hardest things for most people to kind of cotton on to. Bill Gates didn't get rich selling software. Bill Gates got rich building a system. I today have an oil company, a real estate company, et cetera, but I build systems. I have other people working for me. So the point I'm making here, which we're going to talk about, there is a vast difference. You can cover in Rich Dad, Poor Dad between somebody who's been conditioned to think like an employee versus somebody who's been conditioned to think like a business owner. I think the hardest part for people to make the big shift is the difference between what we've been conditioned to think and what we need to think if we want to achieve. The quadrant was from where does your cash flow come from? Does it come as a W-2, an employee? Does it come because, a self-employed person is a person who's like my accountant, and an attorney is a self-employed. And they measure their revenue in the hours. I charge you $100 per hour. Or a salesperson will say, my commission is 6%. The problem is it's them still physically working. A business owner and an investor, a business owner wants a system to work for them. and an investor wants their money to work for them. So we go to school, we become doctors, and most doctors become self-employed. The trouble is they have to work really hard. The reason you know you're self-employed is if you stop working, your income also stops, and that's the problem. The reason I can stop working is because my system continues to work for me. The point I'm making here is mentally, technically, in other words, there's different technical skills you need to learn. Like a doctor needs to know different technical skills than a plumber. Well, to be a business owner, you need different technical skills, but most important is emotional. You see, the thing here is that most people don't understand is I drill for oil. It's one of my companies, and real estate. And we just struck oil in Portugal, major find. Everybody goes, oh, you must be rich now. Well, no, as a business owner, I'm not rich right now. You know, what my rich dad used to say to me is success is expensive. In other words, I struck oil, I have to go raise another $10 million. My employees get paid. They get paid money. But I'm building an asset. I am building a system, and the system is what makes me really rich. I have not taken a penny out of that oil well, even though I've struck. I have to raise $10 more million to go drill more oil wells. And so the problem that most people don't understand is the idea of delayed gratification. We've been trained to expect a paycheck every 2 weeks. Or if I do an hour's worth of work for you, I want to get paid within 30 days or whatever it is. A business owner needs to think differently. They think longer term. They're thinking of becoming extremely wealthy. My rich dad used to say there's 3 positions people operate from. Number 1 is they work just to feel secure or to survive. And you can tell it by their words. And the most important thing is listen to a person's words. They say, I need to put food on the table and put a roof over my head. That's a survival mentality thinking. So if they get that covered, then they move to the next level, which is called comfort. Oh, I think I'll buy a bigger house, or I'll buy a lake house or a new car. And where most people never make it is because they never get beyond the comfort level. You know, they may have $50,000, $100,000 income, $250,000. They think but that's just average middle class. The level above comfort is being rich. And if you can get rich by working hard, have a good life. The trouble is you still have to work hard. To make it to be rich, and that's what I'm talking about, is you should have a system, i.e., that's what Ford did when he built Ford Motor Car, and Edison did when he built General Electric, and Gates did when he built Microsoft. That's how you get rich. Most people are very content being comfortable. And the thing we've talked about up front is the plan that you show and the plan that you talk to people about is a plan to become rich on. So I say up front, and you may not like what I say here, is this. If you just plan to be comfortable, or you just plan to be in the survival mode, this business opportunity will not work for you. If you just want to be comfortable, there's other plans. You know, get a job. You know, start a small business. The sad fact of the matter is our public has been conditioned to be poor. And the way you know that is my poor dad, the PhD, the school teacher, he always said, when my working days are over, my income will go down. And 90% of the U.S. population already makes the assumption that the day they retire, their income will go down. When I retire, my income will go down. And they're planning for it. That's a poor person's plan. It's not how much money you're making today, but what are you planning to be in the future? And most people, by their language, they're planning to be poor. It's really a personal decision. Are you going to work all your life to be poor, or are you going to change a few things and work to be rich? And if you're working to be rich, I highly endorse this plan. If you want to be poor, or just work hard all your life and work until the day you die, which a lot of people plan on, this is probably not the plan for you. As I was saying, the reason I say success is expensive, not with your plan, but with my plan. See, I'll pay my employees money all day long because to me, money is not that important. The asset is important. See, the business is important. Bill Gates didn't get rich with a paycheck. Bill Gates got to be the richest man in the world building a business. And that business is his asset. That is priceless. So what most people have been conditioned to do is they sell their time for money. But that's not really that valuable, especially today. What really is important is the asset, be it a business, be it a real estate, be it a stock or a bond. That's important. So unfortunately, most people have been conditioned to work for money. And you know, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, lesson number 1 is the rich do not work for money. The rich learn to have money work for them. And one of the ways they learn to have it is to acquire assets. And that's the difference. So I work to build this oil company. I'm going to pay my employees very well, and they're very happy. I take no money because I know what's important. My rich dad told me what's important is the business. Now, can that business fail? Absolutely, yes. It is possible. It is possible. A business owner knows that he or she needs to look at it as a 5 to 10 year project. So if you're looking at this to get rich quick, that's ridiculous. This is not a get rich quick plan. This is a plan to build a business. So I don't plan to make any money on my oil well for maybe another 2-3 years. But when I do, it'll probably be $50 to $60 million. Now, could I make nothing? That's also possible. So the problem is, emotionally, most people want the security of that guaranteed paycheck. And if you want to do that, that leaves you in the E quadrant, an employee. If that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, knock yourself out. If you think you can become extremely wealthy from the E quadrant, have a good life. But that's not the way it really runs in the real world. The richest people in the world have built businesses. You look at those guys who built the small internet companies, they're in their 20s and they're billionaires today. And I have guys who are my age, baby boomers, who are looking forward to a $50,000 a year job, and they have their kids' age are already billionaires. And the way they got to be billionaires was by building businesses, not selling a few products, not looking for a safe, secure job. They build businesses. That's the way it is. That's the way it always will be. That's how the rich really get rich. In my world, the industrial age world, when I strike oil, I've got to raise more money. With you guys, you may invest a little bit more into products, into educational things like this. But it's not the intensity of capital that mine requires. My real estate business is so capital intensive, you have no idea. That I make some money, I've got to go make more money. I mean, I've got to buy bigger projects. That's the way everything is set up. So most people don't understand the difference between industrial age businesses and information age business. The plan you're showing is an information age business. It's the wave of the future. It's the thing to do today. And unfortunately, our school system and many of our parents are still thinking industrial age. You should get a safe, secure job, make sure you have a good pension. But those days are gone. Most companies, they want to educate you to sell for them, but you're really training people via your books and you're really encouraging people to think like business owners. And there is a very big difference. It's, delayed gratification. When I say I don't take a paycheck from my company 5 to 10 years, that's called delayed gratification. But you've got to be mature emotionally, and that's what you develop in people. So it's your education, your development program, I think, is brilliant. The problem with most people is they go to work and they hang out with other employees. That's the biggest problem I see, because they come from a certain set of emotional core values, which is job security. You can always tell an employee, because I say, I'm looking for job security and good benefits. So if you show them a business plan, it doesn't fit their belief system. Their core values are different. For me personally, I hate to say this, but I hang out only with business owners and only rich people. Because it's easier. We talk about this, we all speak the same, all of us speak English, but the rich and business owners speak a different language. We use different vocabularies out there. So as an individual thinking about going in or already in this business, I think the first thing that needs to change is who you hang out with. Because it's changed for me. I'll tell you something, nothing changes faster than your friends when you get rich, because when you get rich, they all want to borrow money. And you have to kind of separate you. I hate to say this, but it's true, family and friends. See, the problem with school is you're taught to excel on your own. You get good grades by, participating by yourself. Whereas the world of business is teamwork. I always say that I may lead my business. I am the business leader, but I'm the dumbest guy on the team. Because I have to surround myself with people who are smarter and more successful than me. I want people to pull me up, not pull me down. So as I say in my book, Cash Flow Quadrant, which is book 2 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is who are the 6 people you hang around with? Because those 6 people are your future. Are they from the E quadrant, the self-employed quadrant, the business owner quadrant, or the investor quadrant? There is a lot of truth to the idea that birds of a feather flock together. So this is not just about making a few dollars. This is not about just logging on online. This is a fundamental core value change that I support in people. If you don't want to make that change, this is not your business. I'll say that up front. It's about shifting from the E and the S side, employee and self-employed, a small business mentality, to the big business thinking. B stands for big, S stands for small also. It is about changing. I have mentors, I have coaches. My rich dad was my mentor as well as my coach. He was my emotional support. So the thing I say to people is this: A lot of people hire health trainers. You go to the gym, a fitness trainer, and they pump you up, and they push you through. They make you work harder than you would on your own. That's what a health coach does. Well, what you have, your system, your plan has set up here is like having a bunch of coaches. In other words, you're going to surround yourself on a regular basis. People that are going to support you, push you, ask you, or bring out the best in you, as they say, to bring out that person that is a business owner. For me to make it, I had to surround myself with other business owners, people who had lost money, people who had made money, people who were very wealthy. I don't hang around with people who are risk averse. They just want to play it safe. They're willing to settle for $50,000 to $100,000. Well, I never was, and neither are my friends. We build businesses. And what you guys have, you provide a system of coaches, people that'll support you, push you, educate you, encourage you to be the best. It's about the personal development that your education system is so well established here. It's a brilliant system. I was a pilot for the Marine Corps, and it was very good training because you had to learn to overcome your fear, especially as a helicopter pilot, because when people started shooting, you couldn't run, you had to fly straight into them. But the training was really good. Yet training to be a pilot doesn't mean I can fly for United Airlines, but it doesn't mean I can own United Airlines. And so most of our training is trained to work for the company rather than to own the company. And the mentality and the core values are very, very different. And that's what you guys are teaching here. If you're entering this business and you want to do it on your own, I think that's still an old paradigm, the macho image, things like this, or the self-employed image. It's also called do-it-yourselfers. A lot of times people say, I'm going to quit my job and start my own business. They don't really start their own business. They create a job that they own. They become self-employed. That's the hardest quadrant to operate. I cover in cash flow quadrant, which are the easiest quadrants. At the start, sometimes the B quadrant looks the hardest at the start. But in the long run, it's the easiest. But most people just want money. They want that paycheck. And I think that's the hardest shift for people to understand. It's called delayed gratification. When I was a little boy, for those who haven't heard the story, it's in my book, Cash Flow Quadrant. A rich dad said that told me a story about this little village. And above the village was this lake. And the problem was all the people in the village had to go up every day with little buckets and haul the amount of water back down to the village. So the village elders got together and said, look, we need to get water here so people can do other work. So they put it out to tender, put it out to bid. Who was going to bring water to the village from this lake about a mile away? And so they put it out there, and two guys won the bid. So the first guy said, I got one of the contracts, but I also have competition from this other guy. So he immediately goes out and buys 2 buckets, and he gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He runs up to the lake, scoops up some water, runs down, pours it into the central holding tank in the middle of the village. And he's running back and forth, but the demand for water keeps going up, so he can't find really that many good employees. So he hires his 2 sons and his daughters and all this, and the whole family's up there hauling buckets of water back and forth. They said, but what happened to my competition? I haven't seen he or she around here for a long time. And so 6 months later, they're just hauling buckets. They immediate cash, and they're getting rich. But the problem is, to get more water, they have to keep hiring more people and working harder day and night. Pretty soon they had a 24-hour bucket hauling service going and all this. And when one of the sons went away to college, he says, no, don't forget, you got to come home and take care of the family business. And both sons says, yeah, Dad, sure. I want to work hard for the rest of my life. I don't want to be in the water hauling business. Meanwhile, the guy who also won the bid, he went off, he created a plan. And he hired investors, and he hired an architect. And what they designed instead of a bucket hauling system was they designed a pipeline. And the pipeline ran from the lake a mile away into the village. So suddenly, this guy who's been hauling buckets realizes he has some very serious competition, so he tries to hire more people to compete. The trouble is his expenses, exactly as they keep going up. Meanwhile, the guy who builds the pipeline, his expenses go down. So he can deliver more water at a better price and make more money at the same time, but he has the most important thing, which is most important, is free time. And once he realized this is not the only village in the world, if I can build one pipeline, I can build more. And you go out and he built pipelines throughout the world, and he got wealthier and wealthier. Meanwhile, the guy who was hauling buckets just worked harder. He had more employee problems, higher cost, more competition, and didn't know what to do. So that's the story. What happens to people in the E and the S quadrant, employee and the self-employed quadrant, they actually haul buckets back and forth. What the B and I look for are systems. They want systems that produce better product, better price, greater efficiency. And that's how a business owner thinks. The key to success, I would say, is laziness. Because if you build that pipeline, and then you have free time. So what do you do with your free time? I build another pipeline. Well, some people say that's greedy. Well, that's up to you. But to me, that's smart because my time actually increases. My wealth actually increases by building pipelines. Whereas my friends in the Marine Corps, they say, well, you're silly. Why take the risk? Get a nice, safe government pension, which is not a bad plan if that's all you want to do is be comfortable. But I want to be rich. Today, those guys are comfortable, and today I have pipelines. When I worked for 4 years for another company, I saw my boss who said to me, he says, when I quit my job, I only had 4 years, he says, you're not going to make it. Well, I saw him the other day. In San Francisco Airport, I saw him. He's still making $120,000 a year. And he asked me, he says, what happened to you and your friend, my friend and I who quit the company at the same time? I said, well, he just sold his company for $17 million, and I sold mine for several million also. We're financially free. And that's the difference. My boss is still hauling buckets, and we built pipelines. And the choice is up to you. One's not better or worse. It's just a matter of where you are at this stage of your life. That's the only difference. It was 1978 or 77, I took the step. I was going to start my own business. I left the security of the job world. And all my friends, that was the hardest part, was because all of them wanted me to stay where they were at. They kept saying, you're not going to make it. It's too risky. What are you doing that for? You have a good career. And it was your friends. And that's why I write in Cash Flow Quadrant, who are the 6 people you spend time with? Are they pushing you up or are they pulling you back? And including your spouse and your children, are they pushing you up or are they pulling you back? Because ultimately it comes down to your friends. Because in the world that I'm talking about and we're talking about on this tape, the world of the business owner, there are no guarantees. It's a world of how good are you? How much of a leader are you? Is there something inside of you that's calling right now that's saying there's something better inside of me? And am I going to surround myself with people who want to bring the best out of me or people who want me to be average? And if you want to surround yourself with people who want to bring out the best in you, that's why I support people who want to go for it, people who want to go for their dreams with no guarantees. The problem is there's no guarantees. It's only how good are you. And if you don't think you're good enough, this is not for you. But if you suspect inside of you there's somebody great, somebody willing to come out, this is the program. The reason I like what you guys are doing is because you need to think globally. Most people just think regionally. How big is my town? And that's what I really like about this. You can go anywhere in the world. The beauty of your system is that when I create a business system, I have to have a lot of experts. I spend fortunes on attorneys, accountants, and airfare. I'm traveling constantly to keep my businesses afloat, keep them pumping. This business, what it requires you to do is to be a leader. And what a leader does, a leader has vision, and a leader inspires. You want to be the average guy? This is not the business. In the Marine Corps, I had to learn to inspire young men to risk everything they had, their lives, for the freedom of our country. And I had to speak to them about that. And I said, are you willing to lay down your life so the rest of our country can live? And that's where I learned it. When I see your plan, you're asking people, said there's no guarantees, but do you think that there's a future for you? Are you going to do it for your family? That's what a leader does. It inspires individuals to go into the future and see the possibility of a world bigger and better than it is today. The Hawaiians used to have this story about the ohiki. Ohiki stands for black crab. The black crabs are around the rock. They said you catch a bunch of black crabs and you put them in a little tin can, a gallon can. They'll rattle around. They make all this noise, the clinking of the feet against the can. Then one crab will find, I'm wasting my time rattling around this can. They'll look up and they'll see the light up above. And this crab will jump and do something to get out of that mess. And finally, the crab will reach, hook the edge of the can, come up to the surface and look above and say, hey, guess what? There's freedom out here. There's this beautiful world out here. The Hawaiians say, then all the other crabs, what they do is they grab them, they pull them down. And it says what a leader has to do is not be pulled down. The leader has to be able to pull people up. And that's what your system, the business opportunity is to inspire people to come up, not be pulled down. It's a free country. You can live your life any way you want. In the quadrant, there's employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. Years ago, what you're asking what the price was my freedom. Because when I looked at it, when my rich dad said, you have a choice, he said, if you listen to your poor dad, the school teacher, you'll become an employee. Now, the paycheck may be safe, but the price for your freedom is too high a price. He says, instead be, the person that creates jobs, that inspires wealth, and that requires you to be a business owner. And he says, that's the way you need to think. Think like a team player, not as a rugged individual. So it is a fundamental change in the way you think. The hardest part for me was to hold to the integrity of my thoughts and to my beliefs. Because the world wants you, they program you to become an employee to make somebody else rich. That's not my program. My job was to make myself and other people rich, to think for myself, to stand on my own. The good news is that more and more people are now finally aware that a safe, secure job may not be as safe and secure as it looks. Most people are aware that their 401ks may not provide, the good news is we're going to live longer after age 65. The bad news, you may have to work until the day you die or hope that Medicare is there when you need the money to go into, old age homes and all this. This is a plan that you can start right now. The beauty of your plan is it's not limited by anything. It's only limited by how hard you push, how many people you talk to, how many people you're actually a leader to, how many people do you inspire out there to share the vision, to share the plan. That's all it's limited to. And the process, like I said, give it 5, give it 10 years. But it's not so much how much money you make. I always say is who you become in the process. Who you become. Are you happy where you are now, or do you know there's something more inside of you? That's really the part that I speak to. Your system is the best system I've ever seen for training people to move from the E and the S quadrant to the B quadrant. That's what I support. My rich dad also says you don't get rich at work, you get rich at home. In other words, this is homework. You give your kids homework. Well, this is homework for you. This is when you get rich. It's what you do at home over the kitchen table with your family, your spouse, your kids, your family, whatever it is. You get rich at home, not at work. That's probably the biggest thing my rich dad taught me, is that that's where you get rich. The difference is what you do in your spare time. My question today is, what do you want? The issue I'm saying is, are you willing to start minding your own business, or are you going to spend the rest of your life minding somebody else's business? And if you want to be really rich, and at the risk of being a little uncomfortable at times, then you may want to start minding your own business and thinking like a business owner, not like what the world has trained most people to become. What I recommend to people is keep your daytime job. But what most people do when they need more money is they get a second job. They get a part-time job. That's really ridiculous, especially if you understand what I understand about the business world. So what most people do with the employee mentality is they keep their job, then they get a part-time job, and that's the same problem persists. What I recommend is keep your full-time, daytime job and start a part-time business. That makes a lot of sense to me. My rich dad also said there's only 2 things in investing. There's time and money. And most people are really afraid of losing money. They're so afraid of losing money, they don't invest time or money into anything else. Rich Dad said this. He says that you can always make the money back. You can lose money, and you can always make it back. In fact, you can make it up in spades. It pours in after that. But you can never make time back. Time is a commodity that's always going, always moving. So you can make the money back, but you can never make the time back. And so for some of you right now listening to this tape, the issue really is more time and how you invest that time wisely. My rich dad was my mentor, and he remains to be my mentor. Today, I still surround myself with mentors, people who are much smarter, much more successful than I am. I really don't waste my time with people who are less successful than me because it's a waste of my time. As I say, most of the world wants you to be average. And if you want to be average, this is not the plan. If you want to be very successful and become all you can be, that's what I support. I think the hardest part of the plan is what will come up for most people is a thing called disappointment. Because I know for me personally, in my evolution, becoming from, and I've been poor, as you read about in Cash Flow Quadrant, my wife and I were homeless for a little while, 3 weeks. And all your friends say, why don't you get a job? Why don't you get a job? Play it safe. And part of it, that's when you find out where you are, is you find out who you are in moments of greatest disappointment. In those moments of great disappointment, when your friends reject you or things don't go the way you want, your plans don't go the way you want, are you defeated or are you inspired? And one of the greatest lessons my rich dad taught me, and which is what your system teaches people, in your moments of greatest disappointment, you find out who you are. Are you more motivated, more inspired to go on, or are you defeated by the disappointment? Because disappointment will let you go either way. And the greatest thing I ever found out is when somebody said no to me, when people said, you're crazy, you'll never make it, I had to use those moments as inspiration, not as defeat. And I think that's really the most important thing that you teach people, that in those moments of great disappointment, where things don't go the way you planned, you find out who you really are. The difference between the E, the S, the B, and the I is called emotional intelligence. It is the new subject that came out around the early 80s by a man named Gardner. And he talked about how it's actually emotional intelligence that's more important than intellectual intelligence. For instance, when somebody says, I'm looking for job security, what's really getting them is fear. And when somebody's self-employed, the reason is because they don't trust somebody else. They have to do it on their own. You know, their song is Nobody Does It Better, or Frank Sinatra's song, I Did It My Way. The problem with doing it that way, you have to work. You have to manage your employees. You have to do all that system. You are the system. And so for somebody to make the transition from the E, employee and self-employed, to the B side, is really an emotional shift. And what you talk about is a fear, is a peer pressure. With you, it's family pressure because it was a family business and all this. So the thing I talk about emotional intelligence is how do you overcome your fear? And the story that I tell people is that one day in Vietnam, I was flying my helicopter gunship off the aircraft carrier. I was up at 1,500 feet, had a crew of 5, myself and crew chief, co-pilot, and 2 gunners. And at about 1,500 feet, we were fighting for a city called Quang Tri, where we knew, this is 72, we knew we were going to lose the war in Vietnam. And suddenly the NG gauge flickered on my aircraft. And the moment, I remember in flight school when they said when that NG gauge flickered, it meant that you were about to crash. And suddenly I looked at that thing, and immediately thereafter, the engine of my aircraft quit. Now, a helicopter flying with 6 machine guns, 36 rockets, and a crew of 5 at 1,500 feet, it flies like a rock. It goes down. The tower said that up until the moment of the engine quitting, I sounded like John Wayne. So the moment after that engine quit, I sounded like a soprano and going, Mayday! Mayday, I'm going to die, Mayday! Now the point I make here is this. What they train you to do in the Marine Corps as a pilot, when your engine quits, what you're supposed to do is push the nose forward. But what happens is your emotions say pull back because you want to climb, you want more altitude, you want to feel secure again. So what kills most pilots is that split-second decision right in there. Are you going to make that decision? Are you going to pull back? Are you going to push forward? Now, as soon as that engine quit, the aircraft starts to sink. The last thing you want to do is push that nose forward. It is the very last thing you want to do. And what we were trained to do was immediately push, rock the nose as fast as possible, push it down, not pull it back. The reason a pilot pushes forward is because that's how you pick up speed again. You pick up momentum. If you pull back, unfortunately you lose momentum and you fall faster. It's the strangest thing. And what happens to most people in life, when fear hits them, they don't push forward, they pull back. So some of you sitting listening to this tape right now and the fear is coming up. What are my friends going to say? What happens if I don't make it? There's no guarantees. And what most people do, is which is emotional intelligence, is instead of pushing forward, they pull back. But to survive in this world, the reality is sometimes you need to push forward. Not all the time. But in this situation, flying that aircraft, engine quit, immediately I wanted to pull back. Everything emotionally said pull back, screaming, I want to live. But to live, my mind says you must rock that nose forward. And so what the pilots call is looking at the eyes of death. At 1,500 feet, I had to push that nose forward. All I saw was the South China Sea coming up at me at high speed. I had to maintain my cool, keep talking to the tower, say, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. I had to keep pushing that nose forward, keep pushing that nose forward, holding forward. Today as a business owner, my success lies when everybody else says pull back, and even when myself says pull, I say to myself pull back. I know sometimes I need to push forward and go against the very thing that seems like the most fearful, seems like the most certain, sometimes death. But that's what emotional intelligence is using your mind to overcome your fears. And I think the most important thing that your plan offers is that personal as well as emotional support, getting together, studying the same thing, listening to the tapes, having people who are pushing forward instead of pulling back. The unfortunate thing for most people in the world, especially if they're E's and S's, is most of their friends, when you talk to them, they'll initially want to pull back. But sometimes in your life, you need to make that decision. You'll say, this time I'm going to push forward. And that makes all the difference.
While the techniques and approaches suggested in this presentation may have worked for others, no one can guarantee that they will work for you. We hope, however, that the ideas presented here will assist you in developing a strong and profitable business. It is important to emphasize that success in any business opportunity does not come without hard work. Purchase of this product is optional and subject to the refund policy described in your purchase agreement for business support materials. Purchase of future business tools can be discontinued at any time.